Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Operation Little Plymouth podcast. I'm going to explain what it means in a bit, but first of all, I would just like to let all of you know how happy, how relieved I feel right now. Yesterday was my last probation day. Many of you know, probably all of you that are listening to me and watching me right now know that last year I was sentenced for the January 6th debacle in Washington, D.C. And the judge gave me a year probation, and it ended last night. And it ended last night in a way that only the Lord, our God, our sovereign God can do. And I will also elaborate a little bit on what happened last night. So here I am. I am not going to edit anything today. This podcast or this episode needs to go out today, the 12th day of October 2022. And right here I see how God is amazingly sovereign. He knows, and you guys know how much number 12 means to me. Number 12 in the Bible, for those who do not know, I doubt that there's any of you out there right now that don't know that or doesn't know that the number 12 is the number of government in God's perspective. So here we are on the 12th day of October 2022. For this first episode of this podcast that I named Operation Little Plymouth, and I'm going to explain why it is. So I wanted just to share with you a couple of messages, like pinpointed different messages this morning. Last night I had the honor of attend a wonderful event promoted by the Texas Public Policy Foundation, TPPF, here in Texas. Each year, if I am not mistaken, each year they honor somebody. And last night it was one of the oil business people here in our region. His name is Mr. Dennis Johnson. And this gentleman went up there to receive his honor and a trophy, something like that. But he said, I want to share with you my rules for life. And I took note of that because it was, to me, one of the most critical, important, and at the same time, beautiful things that I have heard from a leader, in this case, a business leader here in our region. And I would like to start right there and share with you what he said. He said that his 3 rules for life, all the success that he achieved, the blessings of his family, he said, this is the direct result of three things which I transformed or turned into the rules of my life. Number 1, my awareness of the awesomeness of God. And when he started right there, there was this awestruck moment in the crowd. There were a lot of people last night there. Pretty much, I could say that 95% of them Christians, people who understand what he was talking about. So he said, my first rule for life is to recognize the awesomeness of God, which he said leads me to number 2, my second rule for life. The awareness of the awesomeness of God brings us to humility before God. He said, all that I achieved in my life helped me to understand that God was the one who gave that to me. And that brings me to a position of humility. I don't have anything that God did not give me. So very powerful right there. And he says the awareness of the awesomeness of God plus humility before this God, the God that we serve, brings us to the best position to serve others. And we heard last night people, ordinary people, and his employees. That was on a video. And people that are related with him, very closely related with him, giving testimony of his heart, of his humbleness, of the way he approaches life, the way he addresses people, the way he values people, and most of all, the word that was used several times, the way he serves people. So awareness of the awesomeness of God brings us to a humility before God, which brings us to the best position, according to his own words, to serve others. So I wanted to start right there. And I hope this blesses you as much as it has blessed me last night. It was amazing for me to be there at that moment in time, my last day of probation, and the Lord giving me these messages, these powerful words that I have already transformed or turned into something that I incorporate for my own personal life. Also, Dr. Ben Franklin was there. He was the special keynote speaker of the night. And I also wanted to share with you what he said, his message last night. He talked a lot. He talked about politics. He talked about his position in the Trump administration. But again, what he said specifically about how he sees life, how he sees God's actions in his life, through his life, throughout his life, it was something that it was also so powerful to hear. So number one, Dr. Franklin, as you know, he is a neurologist or a surgeon, neurosurgeon. And he said that if the human mind could learn one new fact per second, think about that and let that sink in. If the human mind could learn one new fact per second, it would take the human mind 3 million years to reach overload. I'm just silent here just for you to think about those words. One fact, new fact per second. If we could, and we can't, at least it's not for the ordinary people, right? To learn one new thing every second. It would take us 3 million years, our minds 3 million years to reach overload. As he said, the way he posed it was to be challenged, the mind of man, of humans, to be challenged. So I wanted to bless you with that. God made you in a wonderful way. God made us in a massively wonderful way. Second thing he was talking about election. He said, if Satan were in the ballot box, many folks would vote for him because that's the only name recognizable to them. And there was a lot of laugh right there. People laughed, of course, but he said, I'm serious. Because so many people that, they don't do any research, they don't talk, they don't get to know the people that have their names on the ballot. And he said, if Satan's name was there, many people would recognize his name right away and vote for him. And he was pretty much also connecting, satanic, demonic, or evil people that have been on the ballot box in this country for a long time. So that was such a highlight for me last night. And the last thing he said was, when Christians lead, the world is a better place. And we don't need to guess about that, right? We know that that is a fact. Again, every single time this topic comes to the table for me or when others are talking about it, I always remember of Mr. or missionary brother William Carey. He was one of the American missionaries who, together with British missionaries in India, in 1828, 1829, Until that moment in time, India had the cultural tradition of allowing the wives or the widows of husbands who had died to be burned together with them, to be burned alive together with their husbands. Many of those traditions, or many of those women in that tradition did that willingly. Many did not do that willingly. They did that because it was a cultural trait, a cultural tradition to do, for them to do. And William Carey, a preacher of the gospel of Christ, along with other, not only missionaries from Great Britain, but lawmakers, leaders, political, philosophical, theological leaders, they stepped up, and in 1828 they changed that tradition by writing into law that practice was not to be accepted anymore in India. So again, when Christians lead, the world is a better place. I wanted to leave these two very powerful moments I had. The Lord gave me the honor and the privilege and the blessing of being there, being presently there last night at this event. First, Brother Dennis Johnson, and then Dr. Ben Franklin. So, which brings me to my topic, which is the beginning today, the first episode of the Operation Little Plymouth. I have been thinking about this for a while. I remember that in my college years, my university years, 2003, 2004, I think it is almost 20 years now, I came across a research. It was an academic research, and that academic research was titled Operation Little Moscows, or Moscows, the capital of Russia. That researcher was writing specifically about the movement that was born in Europe when, especially during the Cold War, when, the USSR does not exist anymore, the Berlin Wall had fallen. So that was, it had not fallen yet. Let me just correct my history here. But that was the period between 1960 and 1980. That was a moment when this researcher, this academic researcher, started to dig out this movement that started happening in Europe that he named, actually they named, and he put that name on his research, Operation Little Moscows. And that was a movement that aimed at applying, protecting, defending in the local level the communist mindset or the communist movement, the communist principles. They saw that somehow that movement was going to be defeated internationally, nationally, in the big scale, in the large scale. They somehow saw that come. And they said somehow, and I'm translating here, let us do that in the local level, because they believed that the local level was their best chance or their best line of defense for communism to survive, to thrive against the monster of capitalism or whatever they were fighting against, right? Right now we have been, and I read that text again a couple of months ago, and now I'm reading it again. I have been studying about this trend, about this research. And what I see right now, and many of you out there know exactly that I have been talking about this subject for at least beating this drum for 2 years in my radio show every week, on my teachings here at Nehemiah School of Government, and talking to people out there. We need to make a stand in the local level again. We need to know what we want for our local level, because somehow we go out there and we smell socialism, communism everywhere we look. So I am not saying that we should give up the fight and the battle in the national level. I am not saying that we should give up the fight and the war in the state level or even in the county level. What I am saying is that our best chance to keep our cities protected, as God gave Adam the assignment, the mission to tender and to guard, to keep, to protect, to defend the Garden of Eden. It was a massive amount of land or territory, but I look at that as our local level, our local area of influence, starting in our family, going outwards to our neighborhoods, to our larger community, and pretty much our host city, being engaged in the local level. So Operation Little Plymouth is sort of a counteract to the Operation Little Moscows, because Plymouth Rock, and I had the honor of visiting Plymouth Rock, the place where I believe the covenant with God was established by the Puritans in 1620, those coming in the Mayflower. Because 10 years after that, in 1630, as John Winthrop was settling or setting up the foundations for Massachusetts, he said, echoing especially the Mayflower Compact. The Mayflower Compact starts out by saying, for the glory of God. So they glorify God on the very first line of that document. And then they say, our community, our laws, our public policies will be this way, based on the glory of God, based on what John Winthrop 10 years later in 1630 would say, we didn't come for wealth, we didn't come for fur, we didn't come to be rich, we didn't come to make commerce, we came to this land to establish a covenant with God. So Little Plymouth, or Operation Little Plymouth, has to do with our actions in the local level, in our city, that will defend and protect our city against the attacks of socialism, communism, Marxism, statism, globalism, whatever ism you want to put in there. Right now, here in the Permian Basin, here in Midland, here in Odessa, we have been fighting, and we have to. This war needs to grow and increase against ESG, the so-called environmental, social, corporate governance. Out of the United Nations, out of the World Economic Forum, we need to make a stand. I will be interviewing a Texas Public Policy Foundation expert on ESG this Friday, because that is our war right now. This is the battle that we have on our hands right now, and more will come. We have a battle, a very strong battle in our ISDs, in our education arena. We have battles every day. And what I have been saying is, although we should not stop, should not give up our fight to send our best to Washington, D.C. and to Austin, in the case of Texas and other states, it goes the same. We should not give that more priority of our attention, of our prayers, of our focus, of our engagement, than here in the local level. This is why I just wrote last week. It's actually, I did not write this. This is one of the chapters of the book that I wrote in 2007 in Brazil. Then it was translated into Spanish in 2016. And right now I translated it into English. And this is pretty much chapter 5 of my book. And it's called The Impacts of the Civic Culture or Its Lack Thereof in the Local Level. I've been making some notes here. But this is the booklet that I'm putting out there. I would love to put one copy of this booklet free of charge on your hands. Just send me a text to 413-4231. It's going to be in the description of this video. I want to give you the opportunity to understand where this fight is starting for me here in Milan, Odessa, and for you wherever you are. So, with that said, I want to wrap up here because I went way beyond I had planned for this first episode. Operation Little Plymouth. I was listening to a guy the other day. It was a podcast. And he was talking about the Holy Spirit. He was talking about, is a pastor, and he's, by the way, from Brazil. He was talking about the importance of connecting with the Holy Spirit every day of our lives. And he set up a sort of an example, a pattern, a standard that I would like to, first of all, give him the credit for that. And I'm going to get that standard and to transfer it to Operation Little Plymouth. So sorry, I'm trying to speak faster in order to wrap this up quickly. But he was talking about his age, and I'm going to personify, put my age. He is much younger than I am. So in my case, he was saying, well, I'm 55 years old. That is around close to 20,000 days that I have lived on this planet. He was saying, if I would take out the days in my life that I fasted, how many days? I fasted several times in my life, 40 days without food, 21 days without food, water only for both examples, for both situations. Many times 3 days without water, without food. But if we exclude those days that we are not eating for a purpose or that we were sick, so it would amount, 55 years of my life would amount to close 20,000 days of my life. And according to the experts, humans tend to eat, and in average, and of course that is a very wild guess here in the sense of average, because people eat much less than this, people eat much more than this, but the average is 3.5 pounds of food every day. If you multiply 3.5, in my case, 3.5 pounds of food per day times 20,000 days, it would give us this astronomical amount of 70,000 pounds of food in 55 years. That is close to 35 tons of food. Where is this food? He was in his sermon preaching about this. Where is that food? I mean, we would need a massive storage, massive area to put 35,000 or 35 tons of whatever, of food, of materials, right? Of boxes. And he said, where is that food, that amount of food? And he said, well, it has already been digested. It has already been feeding, strengthening your body. And he was talking again about the Holy Spirit, how important it is for us to every single day to have a connection with the Holy Spirit. I want to transfer that lesson from the arena of having straight, close, intimate contact with the Holy Spirit, which was the focus of his sermon, to our action in town, our action in politics, in the local level, in our nation, not only by voting, but by engaging. So if we've had fought every single day of our lives for America, for what America stands for, it would require us another day, today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and so on and so forth. As Ronald Reagan would say, and he said that in the past, in the 80s, liberty, freedom is always one generation away. So this is what I want to wrap up with here today, folks. We need to fight every day as we need to eat every day, as we need to drink every day, as we need to get filled and intimate with the Holy Spirit of God every day. That is a fight that is up to you, up to me, up to each one of us, especially in this moment when America has been so apathetic for such a long time. This is the moment for all of us, not only to vote, because voting for us is a ministry, engaging in politics, engaging in the affairs of the nation for Americans, for this country, which the preamble of your Constitution, our Constitution says, we the people, we are the government. In that sense, if we are the government, it is up to you, it is up to me to work, to engage, to act every single day in order to defend those values that we declare, that we believe to be worth fighting for and even dying for. So thank you so much for being with me today. It was a longer podcast. My average would be between 15 and 20 minutes every episode. So this is the first episode of the Operation Little Plymouth. I'm going to be talking more about that title, Operation Little Plymouth, and why it is. I'm going to give you some more reasons and deeper reasons on why I decided to go with this title and the name for this podcast after talking to some very close friends and people that I trust and I love and I honor so much. So thank you so much for being with me today. Again, rejoice with me, rejoice with my liberty. The sense of freedom is amazing, and I hope the Lord can use me and use you for His glory in this nation so that America can become or return to being a city on the hill for the world to see, a shining city on the hill for the world to see again. May the Lord bless you and have a wonderful day.